When they seated me at the kitchen table during my brother Jason's wedding reception, I smiled politely. 2 weeks later, I cancelled our family company's $1 million contract with his in-laws' business. Blood might be thicker than water, but disrespect comes with consequences they never saw coming. I still remember the looks on their faces when they realised what I'd done. If you've ever been disrespected by family who should have had your back, you might understand why I couldn't let this slide. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. This family drama taught me lessons about standing up for myself that changed my life forever. If you enjoy real stories about family betrayal and karmic justice, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Trust me, you'll want to see how this all plays out. I was never supposed to be the successful one in my family. That role was reserved for my brother Jason. From the time I was little, the dynamic in our household was crystal clear. Jason was the golden child, and I was the one who needed to try harder. At 41, Jason had the kind of natural charisma that made people gravitate toward him. Tall, with an easy smile and effortless charm, he could walk into any room and immediately become the centre of attention. I, on the other hand, was always described as practical and responsible, code words for boring. Our family business, Matthews Construction, was started by my father, Thomas, 35 years ago. Despite its humble beginnings, I helped transform it into one of the most respected construction companies in the Northeast. After getting my MBA from Wharton, I came back home instead of taking offers from prestigious firms in New York. The company needed a financial overhaul, and I knew I could help. Olivia has always been good with numbers, my mother Margaret would say, with a dismissive wave of her hand, as if my financial acumen was some cute party trick, rather than the skill that had saved our company multiple times. While Jason held the title of Vice President of Client Relations, his actual contributions to Matthews Construction were minimal at best. He attended the occasional client dinner, charmed potential partners with stories over golf, and took credit for deals I had meticulously structured. Meanwhile, I worked 60-hour weeks as CFO, negotiated our contracts, managed our finances, and ensured we remained profitable year after year. "Your brother brings in the business," my father would remind me whenever I pointed out the imbalance. "People respond to him. That's just as important as what you do behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. That phrase haunted me. It seemed to be my permanent position in both our business and our family. Things reached a new level of complicated when Jason announced his engagement to Vanessa Caldwell. The Caldwells weren't just any family, they were old money, with Richard Caldwell's luxury real estate development company, Caldwell Properties, controlling half the high-end market in our region. For the past 3 years, Matthews Construction had held an exclusive contract with Caldwell Properties worth millions annually. I had personally negotiated the most recent renewal, securing terms that finally gave us the profit margins we deserved. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mother gushed when Jason and Vanessa announced their engagement at a family dinner. The two families coming together like this. It's like a business marriage as well as a real one. I nodded and smiled while something uncomfortable settled in my stomach. I'd always found Vanessa perfectly pleasant during our limited interactions at business events, but there was something calculated about the way she looked at our family, as if we were a project she was taking on. "We'll have to get you more involved in the social circuit, Olivia," my mother said later that evening as we cleaned up. "Now that we'll be connected to the Caldwells, you can't keep hiding behind your spreadsheets. Maybe you'll even meet someone." I was 32 and single, a fact my mother never failed to mention at least once during any conversation lasting longer than 5 minutes. The implication was always clear. Despite my professional success, I was failing at what really mattered: finding a husband and starting a family. "I'm not hiding, Mum. I'm running a company," I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Someone has to make sure we stay profitable." "Well, with the Caldwell connection, maybe you won't have to work quite so hard," she said, patting my cheek like I was still 12 years old. Jason really did well for all of us. That night, as I drove back to my downtown apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental was shifting in our family dynamics. I loved my brother, despite his flaws and the unfair advantages he'd always enjoyed. But I also knew that the upcoming wedding would change things in ways none of us could fully anticipate. What I didn't know then was just how right I would be, and how completely unprepared I was for what would happen next. The 6 months leading up to Jason and Vanessa's wedding were a masterclass in subtle degradation. What started as exciting family news quickly turned into a series of small humiliations that I tried desperately to ignore. It began with the engagement party at the Caldwell estate, a sprawling property overlooking the water that made our family home look like a guest cottage in comparison. I arrived alone, wearing a navy blue dress I'd splurged on for the occasion, feeling reasonably confident, until Vanessa's mother Caroline looked me up and down and said, "Oh, how professional you look." That evening, I was introduced repeatedly as Jason's sister who works for the family business, despite being the CFO who had doubled our company's revenue in 5 years. Each time I smiled and clarified my position, only to watch eyes glaze over before conversations quickly shifted to wedding plans or Caldwell Properties' latest luxury development. During a momentary escape to the terrace for fresh air, I overheard a conversation that sent ice through my veins. "The Matthews have potential, but that small-town mentality needs fixing," Vanessa's mother was saying to someone. "Especially the sister. So focused on work, poor thing. No sense of the larger social picture." "We'll bring them up to standard," Vanessa replied with a laugh. "Dad says their construction company has decent bones. After the wedding, we can start making the necessary adjustments." I slipped away before they could see me, telling myself they were just being elitist and that it didn't mean anything sinister. After all, our companies were partners. There was no reason for the Caldwells to want anything but success for Matthew's construction. As wedding preparations intensified, so did the red flags. When I offered to help Vanessa with planning, she politely declined, saying she had professionals handling everything. Yet she had no problem calling me at work with urgent questions about Jason's preferences or family traditions. "He mentioned some family vacation spot you all used to visit, some lake with a ridiculous name," she asked one afternoon, interrupting a crucial budget meeting. "Lake Winnipesaukee," I answered. "We went every summer until Mum sold the cabin after Jason went to college." "That's it. We're doing a photo montage for the rehearsal dinner and—" I needed that detail. "Thanks, Olivia. You're so good with the little things." The little things, like our childhood memories, our family history, the experiences that had shaped us, all reduced to props for her perfect wedding narrative. Meanwhile, I was growing increasingly concerned about my father. He looked tired, constantly, and I'd noticed him wincing when he thought no one was watching. When I asked about his health, he brushed me off. "Just getting old, Liv. Nothing to worry about." But I did worry, especially when I caught him taking pills he quickly hid when I entered his office. My mother, as usual, minimized my concerns. "Your father is fine. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any. Focus on being supportive. For your brother's big day." The dress shopping incident was particularly telling, although I wasn't asked to be in the bridal party. "We're keeping it small, just my closest friends," Vanessa explained. My mother insisted I join them to see Vanessa try on wedding dresses. I rearranged my schedule and met them at an exclusive bridal salon in the city, only to sit awkwardly on a velvet sofa while Vanessa's friends made thinly veiled comments about my work attire. "I just admire career women who don't have time to shop," one of them said, eyeing my sensible heels. "So brave to just not care." I caught Vanessa smirking in the mirror as she modelled a gown that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Payment. The final straw came when Jason started cancelling our standing monthly sibling dinner, a tradition we'd maintained even during his busiest periods. First, he was swamped with client meetings. Then, Vanessa's parents wanted to discuss wedding details. Eventually, he stopped offering excuses altogether. When I finally managed to get him alone for lunch, 2 months before the wedding, I tried to express my concerns. "I feel like things are changing between us, Jace," I said carefully. "And I'm worried about Dad. Have you noticed anything off with him lately?" Jason sighed and checked his watch. "You're overthinking things, Liv. You always do. Dad's fine. And yes, things are changing. I'm getting married." That's what happens. It feels like more than that. The Caldwells, I'm not sure they respect what we've built with Matthew's construction. His expression hardened. What's that supposed to mean? Just that I've overheard some comments that concern me. About adjustments to the company after the wedding. God. Olivia, he pushed his plate away. Are you really going to do this? Create drama because you're jealous? Jealous? I was genuinely stunned. Of what? You know what? That I found someone. That I'm happy. That for once, something good is happening for me instead of you being Dad's perfect business protégé. His words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair. I've always supported you, even when what? Go ahead, say it. His voice had taken on an edge I'd never heard before. You've always thought you deserved more credit, more control. Well, after the wedding, there are going to be some changes at Matthew's. The Caldwells have some ideas that will take us to the next level, and Dad agrees. He stood up, throwing cash on the table for his barely touched meal. Maybe it's time you figured out if you're really a team player, Olivia, because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're only happy when you're calling the shots. As I watched my brother walk away, I had the distinct feeling that I was losing him to people who saw our family business as nothing more than an acquisition target. What I didn't realise was how literal that loss would become, or that the wedding I was dreading would be even worse than I'd imagined. The morning of Jason and Vanessa's wedding dawned clear and perfect, as if the weather itself had been arranged by the Caldwells. The ceremony and reception were to be held at Vineyard Estate, one of Caldwell Properties' most prestigious holdings. A sprawling winery with panoramic mountain views that typically booked 2 years in advance. I spent extra time getting ready, determined to look my best despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. My burgundy dress had been carefully selected to match the autumn theme without competing with the bridal party's attire. I'd even splurged on professional hair and makeup, an indulgence that felt necessary given the inevitable comparisons I'd face. When I arrived at the venue 3 hours before the ceremony as requested, I was immediately intercepted by Vanessa's wedding planner, a rail-thin woman with a clipboard and an earpiece who looked me up and down with clinical efficiency. Oh good, you're here. We need someone to coordinate with the vendors. The florist delivered the wrong shade of dahlias, and the band is missing their set list. I'm sorry, what? I'm not part of the wedding staff. I'm the sister of the groom. She consulted, her clipboard with a frown. Right, Olivia Matthews. Yes, Vanessa specifically said you're great with details and would be the point person for any last-minute issues. But I'm supposed to be getting ready with the family. The photographer will be starting soon. The planner gave me a tight smile. The family photos were moved up. They finished those an hour ago. My stomach dropped. No one told me. I'm sure it was just an oversight. Now, about those dahlias. I spent the next 2 hours solving problems that weren't mine to solve, missing the pre-ceremony champagne toast and the moment when my father saw Jason in his tuxedo for the first time. By the time I managed to break away, guests were already being seated for the ceremony. There you are. My mother's voice was sharp with disapproval. Where have you been? We've been looking everywhere. No one was looking for me, I said quietly. I was handling vendor issues because apparently that was my assigned role today. Don't be dramatic, Olivia. Now hurry, they're about to start. I was directed to a seat in the back row, far from where my parents sat in the front with the Caldwells. As I settled in, I noticed Jason's college roommate and his wife were seated in the family section where I should have been. When I caught Jason's eye as he took his place at the altar, he gave me a small nod before turning his attention to the processional. The ceremony was objectively beautiful. Vanessa floated down the aisle in a custom gown that probably cost more than a year of my salary. My brother looked happier than I'd seen him in years. I tried to focus on that, to be genuinely happy for him, despite everything. At the reception, I made my way through the cocktail hour alone, enduring subtle digs from Caldwell relatives about everything from my job, how fascinating that you work with spreadsheets all day, to my single status. No +1. Well, career women often struggle with balance. I plastered on a smile and reminded myself this was Jason's day, not the time for confrontation. When we were finally called in for dinner, I followed the crowd to find my assigned table. I checked 3 times, thinking there must be a mistake. My name wasn't listed on any of the elegantly calligraphed place cards in the main reception area. A waiter noticed my confusion. "Are you Olivia Matthews? I believe you're seated in the kitchen." Annex. The kitchen annex turned out to be exactly what it sounded like. A small room adjacent to the catering kitchen, where the serving staff took their breaks. A single round table had been set up, with my place card next to those of the wedding, planner, the photographer's assistant, and the venue coordinator. For a moment I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate humiliation. "Is something wrong?" Caroline Caldwell's voice came from behind me, saccharine sweet with an undercurrent of satisfaction. I turned slowly. "I seem to be seated in the kitchen. There must be a mistake." "Oh no, dear. We needed someone near the staff to keep things running smoothly. Vanessa thought you'd be perfect since you're so managerial." She patted my arm. "We all have our roles to play. My role is as Jason's sister, his only sibling." "Yes, well." She glanced around conspiratorially before lowering her voice. "Between us, Vanessa was concerned you might feel uncomfortable at the family tables. You know, being the only one without a partner. This way you can come and go as needed for work calls. You're always working, aren't you?" I looked past her, to where my brother sat at the head table, laughing with Vanessa and her parents. My own parents were seated at the table directly adjacent, beaming with pride. "I'd like to speak with Jason. He's rather busy at the moment being the groom." Her smile never reached her eyes. "I'm sure you understand the importance of keeping the help nearby. Your little construction company does good work, but there's a natural order to things, isn't there?" I felt heat rising in my face as the full implication of her words sank in. In their eyes, I wasn't family. I was staff. The help. I made my way to Jason during a brief moment when he was alone. "Jason, why am I seated in the kitchen?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Liv, don't start. The seating was complicated. Vanessa had a system." "A system that puts your sister with the catering staff. How does that make sense?" He lowered his voice. "Look, Vanessa's family is different from ours. Image matters to them. Just roll with it for one day, okay? For me." "Different how? Too good to treat your family with basic respect." "You're making a scene," he hissed. "This is my wedding day. And I'm your sister. Your only sister. Just handle it, Olivia. Like you handle everything else. I need to get back to my wife." As he walked away, I felt something shift inside me. A fundamental change in how I saw my brother and my place in this family. I stood alone, watching the celebration continue without me, when Richard Caldwell stumbled slightly against my shoulder, bourbon in hand. "Ah, the sister," he said, looking me over with the same assessing gaze he probably used on properties he was considering purchasing. "Jason tells me you're quite the numbers whiz. Don't worry, we'll find a place for you after we fix that little construction company of yours. Every business needs someone to balance the books, right?" I stared at him, the pieces suddenly clicking. Together. "Fix our company. What exactly does that mean, Mr. Caldwell?" He laughed, a sound like ice cubes clinking in a glass. "Richard, please. We're family now. And you know how these things go. Synergy, restructuring, progress." He patted my shoulder. "Don't look so worried. We take care of our own." As he walked away, I felt eyes on me from across the room. Several guests had noticed our exchange, and the whispers had already begun. I could feel the weight of their curiosity and pity, the subtle satisfaction of those who enjoy watching someone else's humiliation. With as much dignity as I could muster, I collected my purse and coat and walked out of my brother's wedding reception without saying goodbye to anyone. As I drove away from Vineyard Estate, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Stop making this about you." 5 words that confirmed everything I needed to know about where I stood. 5 words that would change the course of our family forever. The week after Jason's wedding passed in a blur of work and emotional numbness. I buried myself in spreadsheets and projections, finding comfort in the certainty of numbers when everything else in my life felt unstable. At the office, I maintained a professional facade, but inside I was cycling through anger, hurt, and a growing sense of suspicion about what Richard Caldwell had meant about fixing our company. On Friday afternoon, as I was reviewing our quarterly financial statements, something caught my eye. A series of transfers to an account I didn't recognize, each just under $50,000, small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts but substantial when viewed collectively. I spent the next 3 hours tracking the money, following a deliberately convoluted paper trail that eventually led to a holding company registered in Jason's name. Over the past 18 months, nearly $2 million had been siphoned from Matthew's construction to this entity, which had then invested the funds in various Caldwell Properties developments. My hands were shaking as I printed the documentation. This wasn't just unethical, it was potentially criminal. And given the timing, it seemed clear that this had been happening throughout Jason's relationship with Vanessa. I found my father, still working in his office, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. When I placed the financial records in front of him, I expected shock, denial, maybe even outrage. What I didn't expect was his resigned sigh. "I was wondering when you'd find this," he said quietly. "You knew?" The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. "Dad, this is embezzlement. Jason has been stealing from our company." "It's not stealing. When it's your own company, Olivia." His voice had a defensive edge. Jason needed capital to establish himself with the Caldwells, to show he was bringing value to the marriage. "So you let him take company funds to impress his fiancée's family? Money we earned through contracts I negotiated? It's an investment in our future. The Caldwell connection is going to take Matthew's construction to a level we never could have reached on our own. By stealing from ourselves? That makes no sense." He rubbed his face wearily. "You wouldn't understand. You've always been about the bottom line, the contracts, the profit margins. Business is more than that. It's relationships, alliances. This merger with Caldwell Properties—" "Merger?" I interrupted. "What merger?" A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed his face. "We're still working out the details. Richard and I have been discussing combining operations for months. It makes sense, Olivia. They have the development properties, we have the construction expertise." "And when were you planning to tell me about this? I'm the CFO. I should be involved in any merger discussions. We wanted to wait until after the wedding, make sure the families were united first." I felt sick. So the wedding wasn't just a marriage, it was a business transaction. "Don't be dramatic. It's a good match all around. Jason and Vanessa are happy together, and this merger will secure the company's future." "What about my future, Dad? Where do I fit in this new merged company?" His eyes slid away from mine. "There would be adjustments, consolidation of certain positions. You're planning to push me out." The realization was like ice water in my veins. My own family is plotting to remove me from the company I helped build. "No one's pushing you out. There would still be a place for you. Just, perhaps not at the same level of authority. Richard feels strongly that his financial team should take the lead." I thought of Caroline Caldwell's smug face as she explained why I was seated in the kitchen. I thought of Richard's condescending pat on my shoulder as he talked about fixing our company. All the pieces were falling into place. "Does Mom know about this?" "She supports whatever decisions will make this family stronger." I laughed bitterly. "Stronger for who? Not for me, clearly." "Olivia?" "No." I gathered the documents I'd printed. "I need some time to process this. But understand something, Dad. I will not be pushed aside in my own company without a fight." When I got home that night, I had 7 missed calls from Jason. He and Vanessa had returned early from their honeymoon in the Maldives, cutting the trip short for business reasons, according to his voicemail. I didn't call him back. Instead, I called Marcus Chen, our company's accountant who had been with us since the beginning. Marcus had always been straightforward with me. even when... The news wasn't good. I need to meet with you, I said when he answered. Tonight, if possible, and not at the office. 2 hours later, we sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop across town, away from anywhere my family or the Caldwells might frequent. How long? Have you known about the merger plans? I asked after laying out what I'd discovered. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Rumours started about 4 months ago. Your father asked me to prepare some preliminary valuations 2 months back, but he swore me to secrecy. And the money Jason's been diverting? That started not long after he began dating Vanessa. Small amounts at first, then larger. Your father authorised it all. Why didn't you tell me? He looked genuinely regretful. Your father is still CEO, Olivia. He was clear that this was to be kept from you until after the wedding. I'm sorry. I should have said something. What else don't I know? Marcus hesitated. The merger terms. They're not favourable to Matthew's construction. From what I've seen, Caldwell Properties would essentially absorb us. Your father would remain as a figurehead for a transition period, but control would shift entirely to Richard Caldwell. And my position? Eliminated. The plan mentions a consulting role for you, but no real authority. I felt strangely calm as the full picture emerged. They're not just pushing me aside, they're dismantling everything we've built. There's one more thing, Marcus said reluctantly. Your father's health. Has he told you anything? My stomach tightened. No. What? Do you know? I overheard him on the phone with his doctor last month. From what I could gather, it's cancer. Advanced. He was discussing treatment options, but it didn't sound good. The room seemed to tilt slightly. My father was dying, and he hadn't told me. Instead, he'd been planning to sell our company out from under me, securing Jason's future while sacrificing mine. Thank you for your honesty, Marcus, I said finally. I need you to keep this conversation between us. What are you going to do? I'm not sure yet, but I need to see exactly what they've been planning. That night, I used my emergency key to enter the office after hours. In my father's computer, protected by a password that had been my mother's maiden name for as long as I could remember, I found the draft merger documents. They were exactly as Marcus had described, a complete takeover disguised as a merger of equals. Matthew's Construction would cease to exist in all but name, becoming a subsidiary of Caldwell Properties. My father would receive a generous payout and a ceremonial board position. Jason would become executive vice president of the combined entity, with a salary 3 times what he currently made. And I would be offered a 1-year consulting contract at half my current salary, with no guarantee of employment beyond that. In my private office, with no one to witness, I finally broke down. Years of work, sacrifice and dedication, all dismissed because I wasn't the golden child, because I was the sister instead of the brother, because I had committed the sin of being competent rather than charming. As the tears subsided, I remembered something my mentor from business school had told me during a particularly difficult period. When emotion threatens to overwhelm you, return to strategy. Think not about how you feel, but about what you know and what leverage you have. I dried my eyes and began to review the contract I had negotiated with Caldwell Properties 3 months earlier. As I read through the clauses I had insisted on, a realization dawned slowly. In my thorough approach to protecting Matthew's Construction, I had unknowingly created a shield against this very situation. There, in Section 17, subsection C, was a termination clause I had fought for. This agreement may be terminated with 30 days' notice by either party in the event of significant corporate restructuring, change in ownership, or merger activity, with such notice requiring only the signature of the CEO or CFO of the respective organisations. I was the CFO. I could cancel our contract with Caldwell Properties with my signature alone. And based on what Marcus had told me about their financial situation, they were overextended on several development projects that depended on our construction services. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something other than despair. I had leverage. I had power. And I was finally ready to use it. I'd been pushed around and underestimated by my family for years. But sitting in that office, Looking at this contract clause I'd insisted on, I realised something important. Sometimes when people treat you like you're invisible, they forget you can see everything they're doing. If you've ever been in a situation where you discovered your own power after being underestimated, leave a comment below. I'd really like to know how you handled it. On Monday morning, I contacted Matthews Construction's lawyer, Patricia Winters. We had worked closely together during my time as CFO, and I trusted her discretion. When I laid out what I had discovered, she listened without interruption, taking meticulous notes. "Let me understand this clearly," she said when I finished. "Your father and brother have been planning a merger that would effectively dissolve your position, while simultaneously diverting company funds to invest in Caldwell projects, all without your knowledge as CFO." "That's correct, and now I need to know my options." Patricia reviewed the contract with Caldwell Properties carefully, paying special attention to the termination clause I had identified. "This is solid, Olivia. You do have the authority to terminate the contract independently. The question is whether that's the best strategic move." "What do you mean?" "Terminating the contract would certainly cause problems for Caldwell Properties, but it might also damage Matthews Construction in the short term. We need to understand exactly how dependent each company is on the other." Over the next 2 days, I quietly gathered information, careful not to alert my father or brother to what I was doing. I discovered that Caldwell Properties had pre-sold units in 3 luxury developments that were scheduled to begin construction within the next 2 months, projects that required Matthews Construction's expertise and resources. If we pulled out, they would be forced to find another construction company on short notice, likely at a much higher cost if they could find anyone at all in the current market. Meanwhile, while the Caldwell contract represented about 40% of our business, we had a diversified enough client base to survive its loss, especially if we could secure new contracts quickly. I also learned something else critical. My father's cancer was more advanced than even Marcus had indicated. During a private conversation with my father's assistant, I discovered he had been given 6 months to a year to live. The merger wasn't just about business. It was my father's attempt to secure the company's future before his death, and he had chosen to bet on Jason rather than me. The knowledge was a dagger to my heart, but it also strengthened my resolve. I would not let my father's misplaced faith in my brother destroy everything we had built. My next step was to reach out to key employees whose loyalty I needed to ensure. I had always treated our team with respect, fighting for their bonuses and promotions when my father and Jason thought such things unnecessary. Now I needed to know who would stand with me if things became difficult. Sam Torres, our head of operations, was blunt when I approached him. "I've been waiting for someone to notice what's been happening. Count me in, whatever you need. Half the team knows something's wrong, they just don't know what." Emily Reeves, our marketing director, was equally supportive. "The Caldwells have been impossible to work with on the joint marketing campaigns. They treat us like we're beneath them. If you're planning to push back, I'm with you." By Wednesday, I had secured the quiet support of most of our executive team and project managers. I had also reached out to Norton International, a development company that had been trying to partner with us for years, but had been rebuffed by my father due to his loyalty to the Caldwells. "We'd be very interested in discussing potential collaborations," Michael Norton told me during our confidential meeting, especially if certain exclusive arrangements were no longer in place. That evening, I was working late when Jason appeared in my office doorway. He looked tanned from his honeymoon but strangely tense. "You've been avoiding my calls," he said, closing the door behind him. "I've been busy. Running a company takes time." "We need to talk, Liv. About the wedding, about the future of Matthews Construction." I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I'm listening." As Jason began explaining how the seating arrangement at the wedding had been a misunderstanding, and how the planned merger with Caldwell Properties was a tremendous opportunity for everyone, I discreetly pressed record on my phone. Virginia was a one-party consent state for recordings, and I needed evidence of what I suspected was coming. "The thing is," Jason continued, his tone becoming more candid as he relaxed, "the construction industry is changing. We need to evolve. Richard has connections, influence that we've never had access to. And what does that evolution look like for me? I asked, keeping my expression neutral. Jason hesitated, then seemingly decided honesty was the best approach. Look, the truth is, there's some redundancy in the financial departments. Richard's team is top-notch, very sophisticated. So I would be redundant? Not completely. We were thinking more of a consulting role, less day-to-day responsibility. It would free you up to finally have a personal life. He attempted a smile. Maybe meet someone, start a family. Isn't that what you want? What I want, I said carefully, is to be respected for the work I've done building this company. To have my position and contributions acknowledged, not dismissed. Nobody's dismissing anything, Liv, but sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. Dad's not going to be around forever, you know. So he's told you about the cancer. Jason's surprise was genuine. How did you know about that? I make it my business to know things that affect this company. Just like I know about the $2 million you've diverted to invest in Caldwell projects. His face hardened. That was a strategic investment approved by Dad, and it's none of your business. I'm the CFO. Financial matters are exactly my business. For now, he said, the mask of brotherly concern slipping completely. But after the merger, things will change. Richard and Dad have already agreed. It's happening, Olivia. You can either get on board and accept a role that fits your capabilities, or you can make this difficult and end up with nothing. I see. And when did my brother become someone who threatens his sister with nothing if she doesn't comply? I'm being realistic. The Caldwells are powerful, Liv. More powerful than you realise. This merger is happening with or without your approval. We'll see about that. As Jason left my office, his parting words confirmed everything. Don't fight. This, Olivia. For once in your life, accept that someone else knows better than you. We're trying to ease you out gracefully. Don't make us do it the hard way. The next day, I received an invitation to dinner at the Caldwell estate on Saturday. Evening. The email from Caroline Caldwell was sweetly worded but clear in its intent. We're so looking forward to discussing the exciting future of our united families and businesses. Richard has some wonderful ideas to share. I accepted the invitation, with equal politeness, knowing it would be my opportunity to assess just how much the Caldwells knew about their own vulnerability. In the meantime, I continued my preparations. I secured backup copies of all company files, records, and communications. I documented Jason's financial misconduct in meticulous detail. I drafted the formal contract termination notice for Caldwell Properties, keeping it secured in my private safe. And I scheduled a series of meetings with board members who had previously been loyal to my father, presenting them with carefully selected information that raised questions about the merger's true financial impact on the company. Throughout this process, I was conscious of a growing sense of guilt. Despite everything, these were my family members I was moving against. My father was dying. My brother, for all his flaws, was still my brother. Was I really prepared to potentially destroy our relationship permanently? Then I remembered being seated in the kitchen at my brother's wedding, treated as staff rather than family. I remembered Richard Caldwell's condescending promise to fix our company. I remembered my father and brother planning to push me out of the business I had helped build, without even the courtesy of advance notice. Family loyalty went both ways, and they had been the first to break it. On Saturday morning, I made one final attempt. I called Jason and asked to meet him alone, before the dinner at the Caldwells. If there's anything you want to tell me, any explanation that might make sense of all this, I'm willing to listen, I offered. There's nothing to explain, Liv. This is business. It's not personal. It became personal when I was seated in the kitchen at your wedding. There was a long pause. That was Vanessa's decision. She said you'd be more comfortable there, away from all the couples. And you let her do it. You let her humiliate your sister and you did nothing. I can't control everything, Olivia. Sometimes we have to compromise. No, Jason, what you did wasn't compromise. It was betrayal. And if that's how you treat family, then maybe business is all we have left. He sighed. Just come to dinner tonight. Hear what Richard has to say. Please. For Dad's sake, if not for mine. I agreed, knowing it would be the last opportunity to turn back before I set my plan in motion. But as I hung up, I knew in my heart that the decision had already been made. Not by me, but by them, long before I ever discovered their scheme. That evening, as I dressed for dinner at the Caldwells, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked calm, determined, even a little dangerous. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to choose self-preservation over family harmony, to value my own worth above others' expectations. No more kitchen tables, I promised my reflection. Never again. The morning of the Caldwell Properties showcase event dawned bright and clear. The irony wasn't lost on me that the weather seemed to favour momentous occasions involving the Caldwell family. This particular event had been planned for months. A lavish presentation of their newest luxury development to potential investors, partners, and high-end clients. Matthews Construction was featured prominently in all the marketing materials as their exclusive construction partner. I arrived at my office at 6 a.m., 3 hours before our normal opening time. The termination notice I had prepared sat in a sealed envelope on my desk. After one final review with Patricia, I signed my name with a steady hand. There was no going back now. At 7:30, I placed the formal contract termination letter on Richard Caldwell's desk at Caldwell Properties headquarters. His assistant hadn't arrived yet, and security knew me well enough to let me through without question. I left a similar copy for their legal department. By 8 a.m., I had called an emergency board meeting at Matthews Construction for 9 o'clock. As CFO, I had the authority to call such meetings for urgent financial matters, and this certainly qualified. At 8:45, my father arrived at the office, looking confused when he saw the executive team already gathering in the conference room. Olivia? What's going on? Why is the board meeting today? There's an urgent matter we need to discuss, Dad. I've uncovered some financial irregularities that require immediate attention. His face paled slightly. This could have waited until after the Caldwell event. You know how important today is. This can't wait. Trust me. By 9 o'clock, the boardroom was filled with our executive team and board members. My father sat at the head of the table, with empty chairs beside him where Jason would normally sit. I remained standing, ready to present. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I began. I've called this meeting because I've discovered activities that threaten the financial stability and integrity of Matthews Construction. I distributed folders containing key documents I had prepared, financial records showing Jason's diversion of funds, draft merger documents that would effectively dissolve our company's independence, and projections showing how the merger would negatively impact most people in the room. As you can see, over the past 18 months, approximately $2 million has been diverted from our operating accounts to fund private investments in Caldwell Properties developments. This was done without proper disclosure to the board, or to me as CFO. Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen. Additionally, I've discovered plans for a merger with Caldwell Properties that would effectively end Matthews Construction as we know it. Most of the people in this room would be replaced by Caldwell executives. Our company, which we've all worked to build, would become nothing more than a subsidiary with no real autonomy. Olivia, that's enough. My father's voice cracked with strain. These are sensitive negotiations that weren't ready for board review. Negotiations that completely circumvented proper financial oversight and board approval processes, I countered. As CFO, it's my responsibility to bring these irregularities to the board's attention. One of our longest-serving board members, Eleanor Wright, spoke up. Thomas, is this true? Has money been diverted without board approval? Before my father could answer, the conference room door burst open and Jason stormed in, his face flushed with anger. What the hell is this, Olivia? The Caldwell event starts in an hour and you call an emergency meeting. I'm presenting evidence of financial misconduct to the board, Jason. Your financial misconduct, specifically. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, looking to our father for support. "Dad, tell them this is all authorized." My father looked torn, his eyes moving between his son and the board members who were waiting for his response. The investments in Caldwell projects were strategic, perhaps not properly documented, but with my approval. "And the merger plans," Eleanor pressed. "Plans that would replace most of us?" "Nothing was finalized," my father insisted. "We were exploring options. Options that were deliberately hidden from me and from this board," I said firmly. "And this morning, I took action to protect our company." I held up a copy of the termination notice. "As of today, Matthews Construction has terminated its exclusive contract with Caldwell Properties, effective immediately with 30 days transition as specified in our agreement." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Jason lunged towards me, but Sam Torres stepped between us. "You can't do that!" Jason shouted over Sam's shoulder. "You don't have the authority." "Actually, she does," Patricia said, standing. "Section 17, subsection C of the contract specifically grants termination authority to either the CEO or CFO in the event of significant corporate restructuring or merger activity. Ms. Matthews is well within her rights." The commotion grew louder, as everyone began talking at once. My father banged his hand on the table, calling for order, when the conference room door opened again. This time it was Vanessa, followed closely by Richard Caldwell. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard demanded, waving the termination notice. "We have a showcase event beginning in less than an hour with 200 VIP guests expecting to see our partnership front and center." Vanessa went straight to Jason's side, her expression thunderous. "Fix this," she hissed loud enough for everyone to hear. "I told you your sister was a problem. You promised you had her under control." "Everyone, please take your seats," I said calmly, refusing to be intimidated. "Mr. Caldwell, since you're here, you might as well join us. We're discussing the unauthorized diversion of Matthews construction funds into your development projects, as well as the secret merger negotiations that would effectively dismantle our company." "There's nothing unauthorized about it," Richard blustered. "Thomas and I have been planning this for months. Tell her, Thomas." All eyes turned to my father, who suddenly looked every bit his age and illness. The room fell silent as he struggled to find words. "I was trying to secure the company's future," he finally said, his voice weak. "With my health situation, I needed to make arrangements." "By selling us out?" Sam asked incredulously. "By letting your son embezzle funds?" "It wasn't embezzlement," Jason protested. "It was investment in our future together." He turned to the board members. "The Caldwell connection is our ticket to the next level. Bigger projects, higher margins." "At the cost of most of our jobs," Emily pointed out, holding up the merger document. "Including yours, Jason. Did you even read this? You'd be a vice president in name only, with no real authority." Jason grabbed the document, scanning it with growing confusion. "That's not what we discussed," he said, turning to Richard. "You said I'd be running the construction division." Richard waved dismissively. "Details to be worked out. The important thing is the Matthews name would continue." "As nothing more than a brand," I interjected. "The real Matthews Construction, the company our father built, that all of us have contributed to, would cease to exist." "This is outrageous," Richard snapped. "We had an agreement, Thomas." "An agreement made without proper authority," Eleanor said firmly. "As board chairperson, I can tell you no such merger was ever brought to this board for approval." Vanessa, who had been watching with growing alarm, suddenly turned on Jason. "You said this was handled. You said your sister wouldn't be a problem." Her voice rose with each word. "Do you have any idea how I'm going to look when our showcase falls apart, when our investors realize we don't have a construction partner?" "Vanessa, please," Jason tried to calm her. "We can fix this." "Fix it?" She laughed bitterly. "You can't even control your own sister. How are you going to fix anything?" "That's enough." My father's voice, though quiet, cut through the chaos. He looked directly at me for the first time since the meeting began. "Olivia, Why didn't you come to me with these concerns before taking such drastic action? I did, Dad. Last week. You dismissed me. You told me my role would be reduced to a consultant after the merger, that I should accept it gracefully. He had the grace to look ashamed. I was trying to protect you, to give you an easier life. By taking away everything I've worked for, that's not protection, that's betrayal. The room fell silent again. In that moment, with everyone watching, my father seemed to truly see me for perhaps the first time, not as his daughter who needed guidance, but as a capable executive who had been wronged. The kitchen, he said quietly, at the wedding. Was that true? Yes, I confirmed, meeting his gaze steadily. They seated me at a table in the kitchen with the staff. Jason knew and did nothing. My father turned to Jason, shock evident on his face. Is this true? Jason squirmed under his scrutiny. It wasn't my decision. Vanessa handled the seating arrangements. And you allowed it? Your sister? Seated with the kitchen staff? It wasn't a big deal, Dad. Olivia's making it sound worse than it was. My father stood slowly, his face hardening with resolve I hadn't seen in years. Mr. Caldwell, I believe my daughter has made her position clear. Matthew's Construction will not be merging with Caldwell Properties, nor will we be continuing our exclusive contract. You can't be serious, Richard sputtered. After everything we've discussed? Thomas, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, for perhaps the first time in too long. He turned to the board. I move that we accept the CFO's decision to terminate our contract with Caldwell Properties, effective immediately as specified. I further move that we launch a full investigation into the financial irregularities presented today. Eleanor nodded. I second the motion. All in favour? The vote was unanimous, with only Jason abstaining. This is not over, Richard threatened, as security arrived to escort the Caldwells from the building. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will bury this company. I believe you'll be too busy explaining to your investors why your showcase needs to be cancelled, I replied calmly, and why your pre-sold developments no longer have a construction partner. As they were led out, Vanessa turned back to Jason, with a look of pure disgust. Don't bother coming home tonight, or any night. I married a Matthews executive, not a fired nobody. In the aftermath of their departure, the boardroom remained silent for a long moment. Then my father did something completely unexpected. He walked around the table to where I stood and embraced me. I'm sorry, Olivia, he whispered, his voice breaking. I've been so wrong. About everything. As the board members filed out to give us privacy, I felt something shift in the room. A rebalancing of power, yes, but also perhaps the first step toward healing a family that had been broken in ways I hadn't fully understood until now. Jason remained seated, shell-shocked by the rapid unravelling of everything he'd counted on. When we were alone, just father, son and daughter, he finally spoke. What happens now? It was a good question, one I wasn't entirely sure how to answer. The 48 hours following what company employees quickly dubbed the Caldwell confrontation were among the most intense of my professional life. News of the terminated contract spread through the industry like wildfire, with Caldwell Properties, stock dropping 15% by market close the same day. Their showcase event was hastily converted into a vision presentation, but investors weren't fooled. Without a construction partner, their timeline projections were meaningless. Meanwhile, I worked around the clock with our team to stabilise Matthew's Construction. We contacted clients, reassured partners, and began accelerated negotiations with Norton International to fill the gap left by the Caldwell projects. Michael Norton, true to his word, moved quickly to formalise our partnership on terms that were remarkably favourable to us. I've waited years for the opportunity to work with Matthew's Construction, he told me during our signing meeting. And frankly, I've always thought you were the brains behind the operation. On the third morning, as I arrived at the office before dawn as had become my habit, I found my mother waiting in my office. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her normally perfect appearance dishevelled in a way I'd never seen before. How could you do this? She demanded without preamble. Your father's health has deteriorated dramatically. The doctor says the stress may have taken months off what little time he has left. The accusation hit hard, exactly as she'd intended. I'm sorry about Dad's health, truly, but I didn't create this situation. You publicly humiliated our family. You destroyed Jason's marriage. You threw away a partnership that would have secured all our futures. A partnership that would have eliminated my position and eventually absorbed our company. They were using us, Mum. Using Jason. The merger documents made that clear. So your pride was worth tearing this family apart. This isn't about pride. It's about respecting what we've built. About not letting the Caldwells take advantage of Dad's illness. To steal our company. She shook her head in disgust. I always knew you were ambitious, Olivia, but I never thought you'd put business ahead of family. That's rich coming from you. Where was your concern for family when they seated me in the kitchen at Jason's wedding? When did you stand up for me then? A flicker of discomfort crossed her face. That was unfortunate, but hardly worth this level of retaliation. It wasn't just the wedding. It was years of being treated as less than, of having my contributions minimised, of watching Jason get credit for my work. So, this is about jealousy. No, Mom, this is about justice, about finally saying enough is enough. She stood to leave. Well, I hope your justice keeps you warm at night. I've moved out of the house to stay with Jason. Your father can deal with the fallout of your actions on his own, since he's chosen to support you in this madness. After she left, I sat alone in my office, wrestling with doubt for the first time since I'd set my plan in motion. Had I gone too far? Was my mother right that I'd prioritised the company over my family's well-being? I didn't have long to dwell on these questions. My assistant interrupted with urgent news. Anonymous threats had been made against Matthew's construction, and someone had attempted to access our secure server overnight. The next few weeks brought a steady stream of challenges. Several employees, loyal to Jason, resigned. Subcontractors with Caldwell connections suddenly became unavailable for our projects. Anonymous tips about Matthew's Construction's financial irregularities were sent to regulatory agencies, triggering audits that consumed valuable time and resources. Through it all, I maintained a calm exterior at work while privately dealing with the emotional toll of family fracture. My father, against doctors' recommendations, came to the office daily, though often for just a few hours. His silent support strengthened my resolve, even as his physical decline became increasingly apparent. Jason had effectively disappeared from company operations. According to office rumours, he had moved into a hotel after Vanessa locked him out of their home. I made no attempt to contact him, unsure what I could possibly say that would make any difference now. 6 weeks after the confrontation, an unmarked envelope appeared on my desk. Inside was a thumb drive containing emails between Richard and Vanessa Caldwell, dating back to when she first met Jason. The correspondence made clear that their relationship had been strategically initiated with the specific goal of facilitating a takeover of Matthew's Construction. Target acquired, Vanessa had written after their third date. He's exactly as described, eager to please, easily flattered, and desperate for approval. This will be easier than we thought. Later, emails discussed their growing concern about my role in the company. The sister continues to be an obstacle, Richard wrote. She questions everything, keeps pushing for contract terms that protect Matthews. Jason assures me he can handle her, but I'm not convinced. Most damning was an email from just 2 days before the wedding. Once the marriage is finalised, we'll accelerate the timeline. Thomas's condition is deteriorating faster than expected. We need to get the merger documents signed while he's still capable. The sister will be offered a consulting role to save face, but make no mistake, she'll be gone within 6 months. I couldn't determine who had sent me these emails, though. I suspected it might have been someone from Caldwell Properties with an attack of conscience. Whatever the source, they confirmed that everything I had feared was true. The Caldwells had targeted our family and our company with calculated precision. That evening, I received an unexpected call from my father asking me to come to the house. When I arrived, I found him alone, sitting in his study surrounded by family photos and company awards. "Your mother's not here," he said as I hesitated in the doorway. "She's still staying with Jason." "How are you feeling?" I asked, noticing the new oxygen tank beside his chair. "Like a fool," he replied with a sad smile. "Sit down, Olivia. Please." I took the chair across from him, the same spot where I'd sat countless times growing up whenever he wanted to discuss something important. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about the company, about our family, about the choices I've made. Dad, you don't have to—" He held up a hand to stop me. "I do. I've been unfair to you for years, Olivia. I see that now. I allowed my old-fashioned ideas about family business to blind me to what was right in front of my face, that you were the one who truly understood and cared for what I built." His candour caught me off guard. My father had never been one for emotional conversations or admitting mistakes. "Why Jason?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for years finally finding voice. Why was it always him, even when I was clearly more committed, more capable? He sighed deeply. Because he reminded me of myself when I was young, all charm, big dreams, not much else. I started Matthew's construction with nothing but a second-hand truck and more confidence than sense. Your grandfather didn't believe in me, refused to help. I vowed I'd never do that to my own son. So instead you did it to your daughter. Not intentionally, but yes, that was the result. He reached for my hand. The irony is, you're actually more like me than Jason ever was. The real me, not the one I pretend to be in client meetings. You have the same drive, the same attention to detail, the same refusal to accept less than what you deserve. Tears pricked at my eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I never wanted to hurt you, Dad, or the company. I just couldn't let them take everything we built. I know that now, and I'm proud of you, Olivia. I should have said that more often over the years. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words and lost time hanging between us. "There's something else," he said finally. "I've changed my will and the company's succession plan. Matthew's construction will go to you upon my death. Jason will retain his ownership shares, but operational control and majority voting rights will be yours." "Dad, it's already done. The lawyers finalised it yesterday." Before I could respond, the front door slammed, and Jason's voice called out, "Dad, are you here? We need to talk." He appeared in the study doorway, stopping short when he saw me. He looked terrible, unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot. "What's she doing here?" he demanded. "I asked her to come," our father replied calmly. "And I'm glad you're here too. We need to talk, all of us." "About what? How she destroyed my marriage, got me thrown out of my own home, made me a laughingstock in the industry. Vanessa married you as part of her father's plan to take over our company," I said, sliding a printout of the emails across the coffee table. "Read these, then tell me I'm the one who destroyed your marriage." Jason snatched the papers, his expression shifting from anger to disbelief as he read. "This can't be real," he muttered. "She wouldn't—" "She did," our father confirmed gently. "They used you, son. Used all of us." Jason sank onto the couch, the fight draining out of him. "She's filing for divorce. Says there's a morality clause in our prenup that's triggered by my financial misconduct at the company. Her lawyers say she's entitled to half my shares in Matthew's construction." "That won't happen," I assured him. "Those transfers weren't authorised by the board. We can prove that in court if necessary." He looked up at me, his expression a mix of resentment and grudging respect. "You really did think of everything, didn't you?" "Not everything. I never wanted it to come to this, to hurt you or Dad or the company. Yet here we are." He stood abruptly. "I need some air." After he left, my father and I sat in silence again. Finally he spoke. "He'll come around, eventually, when the hurt and humiliation fade." I wasn't so sure. but I nodded anyway, unwilling to cause my father more pain. As I prepared to leave, he caught my hand once more. Whatever happens with Jason, with your mother, with the company, know that I'm sorry, Olivia, for all of it. And I'm so very proud of the woman you've become, even if I had very little to do with it. Driving home that night, I felt the first tentative threads of reconciliation with my father, even as the gulf between my brother and me seemed wider than ever. The company was stable, our partnership with Norton International was thriving, and I had finally earned the recognition I'd sought for so long. Yet the victory felt hollow, tinged with the loss of family harmony and the knowledge that my father's remaining time was short. I had won the battle for Matthew's construction, but the cost to our family remained to be fully calculated. What I didn't know then was that the most unexpected developments were still to come, from the direction I least anticipated. 3 months after the boardroom confrontation, I arrived at my office to find a young man waiting outside my door. He stood as I approached, extending his hand with a nervous smile. "Ms. Matthews? I'm Michael Caldwell, Vanessa's younger brother." I tensed immediately, wary of another Caldwell ambush. "How did you get in here?" "Your assistant let me through. I told her it was important." He gestured to the chair beside him. "I only need 5 minutes of your time, please." Against my better judgment, I unlocked my office and motioned him inside. Michael Caldwell was nothing like his father or sister. Where they projected calculated confidence, he seemed genuinely uncertain, fidgeting with his watch as he took a seat. "I'll be direct," he said. "Caldwell Properties is in serious trouble, more trouble than anyone outside the family realizes. And you're telling me this because I think you deserve to know. The attempted takeover of Matthew's construction wasn't just about expansion, it was about survival. My father overextended on 3 major developments, assuming the Matthews merger would provide the construction expertise and financial stability needed to complete them." I studied him carefully. "Why are you really here, Mr. Caldwell?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, because I'm tired of the way my family operates. I've spent my entire life watching my father and sister manipulate and use people. I was supposed to be part of the family business, but they've always kept me on the periphery because I question their methods." "So this is revenge?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "No, it's atonement, maybe." He pulled a flash drive from his pocket and placed it on my desk. "This contains internal Caldwell Properties financial projections, partnership agreements and loan documents. You'll see they're headed for bankruptcy within 6 months, unless they find another construction partner willing to work at below-market rates." I made no move to touch the drive. "Why should I believe anything from a Caldwell?" "Because, unlike my father and sister, I don't have anything to gain by lying to you. I'm the family disappointment, the one who studied environmental design instead of finance, who questions the ethics of our developments, who thinks maybe business shouldn't always be about maximizing profit at any cost." There was something genuine in his frustration that made me reconsider my initial judgment. "Let's say I believe you. What do you expect me to do with this information?" "Nothing. Use it. Ignore it. That's your choice. I just thought you should have all the facts." He stood to leave. For what it's worth, I was disgusted when I heard about the wedding seating. That was Vanessa's idea, but my father approved it. They thought humiliating you would make you more likely to accept a diminished role after the merger. As he reached the door, curiosity got the better of me. "Michael, why did you really come here today?" He paused, hand on the doorknob. "Because I saw someone finally stand up to my family and win. That's not something I've witnessed before." It made me think maybe things could be different. After he left, I had the flash drive contents verified by our IT team before reviewing them. Everything Michael had said was true. Caldwell Properties was in dire financial straits, with Richard Caldwell having leveraged company assets for personal investments that had performed poorly. The attempted takeover of Matthew's construction had indeed been a desperate survival move rather than simple expansion. I was still processing this information when my assistant interrupted with urgent news. My father had been rushed to the hospital after collapsing at home. By the time I arrived at the hospital, my mother and Jason were already there, standing tensely on opposite sides of the waiting room. Neither acknowledged me as I entered, but the doctor's arrival forced a temporary truce. Mr. Matthews has had a significant decline, the doctor explained gently. The cancer has spread more aggressively than we anticipated. He's stabilized for now, but I need to be clear. We're talking about weeks rather than months at this. Point! My mother broke down in tears while Jason turned away, his shoulders rigid with emotion. I thanked the doctor and asked when we could see him. He's asking for all of you. Together. The three of us entered my father's hospital room in uncomfortable silence. He looked so diminished in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and tubes, that my chest physically ached at the sight. Finally, he said weakly, attempting a smile. My whole family in one room again. My mother rushed to his side, taking his hand and smoothing his hair with a tenderness I hadn't witnessed in years. Jason hung back near the door, while I moved to the opposite side of the bed. No more fighting, my father said, his voice barely above a whisper. Life's too short, I should know. Thomas, don't talk like that, my mother scolded gently. You need to save your strength. For what, Margaret? So I can pretend a little longer that our family isn't broken? He looked at each of us in turn. I don't have time for pretense anymore. He turned to Jason first. Son, I failed you by making things too easy. By never challenging you to be more than charming. I thought I was being supportive, but I was actually holding you back. Jason looked stricken. Dad, you don't have to... Let me finish, I'm proud of you, but not for the reasons you think, not for the deals or the connections. I'm proud of how you care for people, how you remember everyone's birthdays, how you visited old Mr. Henderson every week after he retired until the day he died. That's your real gift, not charm, but genuine care for others. I should have helped you build on that instead of pushing you into roles that never fit. He turned to me next. Olivia, I've already said much of what I needed to say to you, but your mother needs to hear it too. You saved our company, not just from the Caldwells, but from my own poor decisions over the years. I've been taking credit for your achievements for too long. The truth is, Matthew's construction would have failed years ago without you. Finally, he looked at my mother. Margaret, I love you, but we both know you favoured Jason since the day he was born. It's time to acknowledge what that has cost our daughter, and what it's cost Jason too, by never requiring his best. My mother was openly crying now. Thomas, please, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time, he insisted. I'm not asking you all to pretend the hurt hasn't happened. I'm asking you to acknowledge it, and then decide if this family is worth saving, because I won't be here to hold it together anymore. The gravity of his words hung in the air, making the beep of monitors and hiss of oxygen seem unnaturally loud. I want your promise, he continued. All of you. Promise me you'll try. That's all I ask. Just try to find a way forward together. What else could we do but nod and murmur our agreement? In that moment, with my father so clearly slipping away, any other response was unthinkable. As visiting hours ended and we prepared to leave, an unexpected visitor arrived. William Carter, my father's oldest friend and mentor, the man who had given him his first construction job 40 years ago. I came as soon as I heard, William said, embracing each of us briefly before taking my father's hand. You always did have a flair for drama, Thomas. My father actually laughed, a sound so welcome it brought fresh tears to my eyes. Bad timing as usual, Bill. They're kicking everyone out. I've got connections with the night nurse. I'll stay a while. He looked meaningfully at the three of us. You all look terrible. Go home, get some rest. I'll keep this old troublemaker company. In the hospital parking lot, an awkward silence descended as we stood by our respective cars. I'm staying at the house tonight, my mother announced, not quite meeting my eyes. In case the hospital calls. I'll come too, Jason said after a moment's hesitation. They both looked at me expectantly. I'll stop by in the morning, I said, knowing we all needed space to process what had happened. Call me if anything changes. Overnight. When I arrived home, I found another surprise visitor waiting in my lobby. Michael Caldwell again, looking even more anxious than during our morning meeting. I heard about your father, he said. I'm so sorry. But there's something else you need to know. My father is planning to file suit against Matthews Construction tomorrow. He's claiming breach of contract, fraud, a whole list of things. It's baseless, but he's desperate and determined to cause damage. How do you know this? I overheard. Him on the phone with his lawyers. He's liquidating personal assets to fund the legal battle. Michael hesitated. There's more. Your brother called my sister tonight. Jason called Vanessa? That was unexpected. Yes, he was emotional. Said some things about your father's condition. Vanessa immediately called our father. They're accelerating their plans, trying to take advantage of your family crisis. I felt a surge of anger, not just at the Caldwells but at Jason as well. Even now he couldn't see how he was being used. Thank you for telling me, I said. But why are you helping us? You're putting yourself at risk. Michael looked down, seeming to struggle with his answer. For my whole life, I've watched my father and sister destroy people to get what they want. I've stayed quiet, told myself it. Wasn't my business. But what they did to your family, what they're still trying to do, I can't be silent anymore. I studied him carefully, looking for any sign of deception, but finding only genuine discomfort. What do you want in return? Nothing. He met my gaze directly. Maybe just the chance to work somewhere that doesn't require selling your soul. As a job requirement. The next morning, I arrived at my parents' house early, finding Jason alone in the kitchen, staring into a cup of coffee. Mum's getting dressed, he said without looking up. Hospital called. Dad had a rough night. I poured myself coffee, leaning against the counter instead of sitting. I heard you called Vanessa last night. His head snapped up. How did you... It doesn't matter. What matters is that within minutes of your call, Richard Caldwell was on the phone with his lawyers, planning to file suit against us today. They're using Dad's condition to their advantage, Jason. Still. He set his cup down hard enough to slosh coffee onto the table. I didn't tell her anything about the company. I needed to talk to her. And you didn't think she would use anything you said against us? After everything we now know? She was my wife, Olivia, for all of 6 weeks, but still, I loved her. His voice cracked on the last word. Or I thought I did. I don't know what was real anymore. Despite everything, I felt a flash of sympathy. Jason had been manipulated expertly by people who'd identified his every vulnerability and exploited them ruthlessly. None of it was real for her, I said, gentler now. The emails make that clear. But your feelings were real. You're allowed to grieve that. He looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. How are you not completely falling apart? Dad's dying, the company's under attack, our family's in shambles. Yet here you are, still functioning, still 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Trust me, I'm barely holding it together, I admitted. I'm just good at compartmentalizing. Like at the wedding, he said suddenly. When they put you at that table in the kitchen, you just handled it. Walked out with your head high. I saw you leave, you know. I told myself you were overreacting, being dramatic. But the truth is I was embarrassed. Not by you. By myself. For letting it happen. It was perhaps the most honest thing my brother had ever said to me. Before I could respond, my mother appeared in the doorway, dressed impeccably as always, despite the circumstances. We should go, she said. The doctor wants to speak with all of us. At the hospital, we received the news we'd been dreading. My father had taken a significant turn for the worse overnight. The doctor spoke of making him comfortable and saying goodbyes in the gentle euphemisms of imminent loss. In my father's room, William Carter was still there, looking as though he hadn't left since the previous evening. He stood when we entered, embracing my mother with surprising tenderness. I'll give you all some privacy, he said. No. My father's. Voice was weaker than yesterday, but still commanding. "Stay, Bill. Your family too." William resumed his seat as we gathered around the bed. My father's breathing was laboured, but his mind was clear as he looked at each of us in turn. "I don't have much time," he began, "so listen carefully. Matthew's Construction is more than a company. It's my legacy, but a legacy is worthless if there's no one to carry it forward." He reached for my hand. "Olivia, you have the vision and the strength to lead. But remember that success means nothing without people to share it with." To Jason, he said, "Son, you have a gift for connecting with people that your sister and I lack. Don't waste it trying to be something you're not. Find your own path, even if it's not the one I imagined for you." Finally, to my mother, "Margaret, these are your children, both of them. When I'm gone, they'll need you to be stronger than you've ever been. To love them equally, even when it's difficult." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. "One last thing. There's a letter in my desk at home, bottom right drawer. Read it together. Promise me." We all nodded, too emotional for words. For the next few hours we sat with him as he drifted in and out of consciousness. William shared stories of my father's early days in construction, making us laugh despite our grief with tales of spectacular mistakes and hard-won lessons. At one point, when my mother and William had stepped out briefly and Jason had gone for coffee, my father beckoned me closer. "The Caldwells," he whispered. "Be careful. Richard plays the long game." "I know, Dad. We're prepared." He shook his head slightly. "Not just legally. He'll try to divide you. Jason is vulnerable. Your mother, too." "I'll protect them," I promised. "And yourself." His fingers tightened weakly around mine. "I'm so sorry, Olivia, for all the times I didn't see. You?" "I know, Dad, it's okay." "No," he insisted. "It's not okay, but you're strong enough to forgive anyway. That's what makes you extraordinary." When Jason returned, my father asked for a moment alone with him. Through the glass window of the hospital room, I watched my brother break down, sobbing as my father spoke to him with evident urgency. Whatever was said in those private moments seemed to transform something in Jason. He emerged from the room with red eyes, but a new resolve in his bearing. That evening, with the family gathered around his bed, Thomas Matthews took his final breath. The room fell silent except for my mother's quiet weeping and the machines that would soon be turned off. In the days that followed, we moved through the necessary rituals of death, the funeral arrangements, the obituary, the steady stream of visitors offering condolences. Richard Caldwell did indeed file his lawsuit, but it was temporarily overshadowed by the community's response to my father's passing. As a respected business leader who had employed hundreds of local residents over the decades, his funeral was attended by nearly 1,000 people. 3 days after the funeral, the three of us gathered in my father's study to read the letter he had mentioned. My mother sat in his chair, hands trembling slightly as she opened the envelope. "My dear family," she read aloud. "If you're reading this, then I've moved on to whatever comes next. I've never been good at expressing my feelings, but perhaps in writing, I can find the words that eluded me in life. Margaret, my love for 42 years, you've been my constant, my North Star. But in your desire to protect our son, you've sometimes failed to see our daughter's worth. This wasn't fair to either of our children. Jason needed challenges, not protection. Olivia needed recognition, not endless expectations. I hope you can find balance now. Jason, my son, I've given you many things, but perhaps the greatest disservice was never requiring you to earn them. The ease with which opportunities have come to you has prevented you from discovering your true potential. It's not too late. Find something you truly care about and pour yourself into it, not for my approval or anyone else's, but for your own satisfaction. Olivia, my daughter, you've always had to work twice as hard for half the recognition, and that burden falls squarely on my shoulders. Yet you've excelled despite this unfairness. Your intelligence, determination and integrity have built Matthew's Construction into what it is today. Trust these qualities in yourself, but remember that vulnerability is not weakness, it's human. As for the company, it will face challenges in my absence. The Caldwells will not give up easily. Stand together. Remember that while business is important, family is irreplaceable. Find a way forward that honours both. I leave you with this final thought. Forgiveness is not about forgetting wrongs or pretending hurts didn't happen. It's about choosing to move forward unburdened by the past. Forgive each other. Forgive yourselves. And perhaps, when you're ready, forgive even those who sought to harm you. Not for their sake, but for your own peace. With all my love, Thomas. We sat in silence when my mother finished reading, each lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Jason spoke. I'm moving back to the house for a while, if that's okay, Mum. I need to figure some things out. My mother nodded. Of course. This is your home too. He turned to me. And I want to come back to the company. Not as VP, I didn't earn that, but I'd like to start over, find where I can actually contribute. I studied my brother, seeing genuine humility in his expression for perhaps the first time. We could use help with client relations, not the flashy parties, but the real relationship building, checking in on projects, making sure clients feel heard. I'd like that, he said quietly. My mother cleared her throat. Olivia, I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. I've been unfair to you for a very long time. Mum, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Your father was right. I favoured Jason, made excuses for him, while holding you to impossible standards. I was wrong. She straightened her shoulders. But I'd like the chance to do better if you'll let me. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. There were too many years of hurt for that. But it was a beginning, a small opening that might, with care and time, widen into something like healing. The next day at the office, I received another visit from Michael Caldwell. This time he came with a proposal. I've left Caldwell Properties, he announced. Officially resigned this morning. My father is furious, of course. Sees it as the ultimate betrayal. What will you do now? I asked. That's actually why I'm here. I have a background in sustainable design and marketing. I was wondering if Matthews Construction might have a place for someone with those skills. The irony wasn't lost on me, hiring a Caldwell in the aftermath of their attempted takeover. But Michael had proven himself an ally when we needed one most. We're expanding our green building initiatives, I said after consideration. It's a growing market segment, and we could use someone with your expertise to help position us. His face lit up. Really? You'd consider it after everything my family's done? You're not your family, Michael. You've made that very clear. I extended my hand. Send me your resume, and we'll make it official. As he left, I felt a strange sense of things coming full circle. The Caldwells had tried to infiltrate our company through Jason. Now we were welcoming a Caldwell who had rejected his family's methods. There was a certain poetic justice in it. The lawsuit Richard Caldwell filed was eventually dismissed, though not before draining considerable resources on both sides. Caldwell Properties did indeed face bankruptcy within 6 months, as Michael had predicted. Richard was forced to sell majority control to investors who immediately replaced him as CEO. Vanessa, having lost both her marriage and her position at her father's company, moved to the West Coast to reinvent herself, according to industry gossip. Jason received divorce papers on what would have been their 3-month anniversary. As for Matthews Construction, we not only survived but thrived. Our partnership with Norton International opened doors to larger projects than we'd ever handled before. Our reputation for ethical business practices and quality work spread, bringing new clients eager to work with a company that stood by its principles. Jason found his niche in client relationship management, where his natural empathy and interpersonal skills made him genuinely valuable. Without the pressure to be something he wasn't, he discovered abilities he hadn't known he possessed. My mother began taking a more active interest in the company's charitable foundation, channeling her energy into community projects that honoured my father's legacy. And I learned that leading didn't always mean carrying every burden alone. That, trusting others, even those who had hurt me in the past, could sometimes yield unexpected rewards. 1 year after my father's death, as we gathered for a private memorial, I realised that while the wounds weren't fully healed, they had begun to close. Not because we had forgotten the hurts, but because we had chosen to move forward despite them, just as my father had hoped we would. 1 year to the day after my father's passing, Matthews Construction hosted the Thomas Matthews Memorial Scholarship Benefit, an event to raise funds for young people entering the construction trades. The grand ballroom of the Cedar Heights hotel was filled with industry leaders, community members, and employees past and present, all gathered to honour the man who had built more than just buildings. I stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd, feeling a complex mix of grief and pride. My father believed that success meant nothing if not shared, I began. He built Matthews Construction not just as a business, but as a family. Tonight we extend that family by creating opportunities for the next generation of builders and dreamers. From my vantage point, I could see my mother seated at our company's table, elegant as always but softer somehow, the rigid perfectionism that had defined her for so long giving way to a more authentic presence. Beside her sat Jason, who had spent the past year rebuilding himself with the same care and attention he now brought to our client relationships. The company we led together was stronger than ever. Matthews Construction had not only survived the Caldwell crisis, but emerged with a clearer identity and purpose. Our partnership with Norton International had expanded our reach into new markets, and our focus on sustainable building practices, spearheaded by Michael Caldwell, who had proven himself an invaluable addition to our team, had positioned us at the forefront of industry innovation. After my speech, as guests mingled during the reception, I found myself approached by an investment banker I recognised from previous industry events. "Ms. Matthews, congratulations on a wonderful evening," he said, extending his hand. "And on Matthews Construction's remarkable performance this past year. Your company has caught the attention of some very interested parties." "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. That's kind of you to say." "More than kind, it's factual. In fact, I'm here representing Westfield Development. They've authorised me to discuss a potential acquisition offer. The numbers would be substantial." I smiled politely. "That's flattering. But Matthews Construction isn't for sale. Everyone has a price, Ms. Matthews," he countered smoothly. "Perhaps we could discuss this in more detail over lunch next week. Westfield is prepared to ensure the Matthews name continues, of course. They value your brand and legacy." The Matthews name isn't just a brand, Mr. Donovan. It's a promise to our employees, our clients, and our community. That's not something we're looking to sell at any price. As he excused himself, disappointment evident in his expression, Jason appeared, at my side with 2 glasses of champagne. "Let me guess," he said, handing me one. "Another acquisition offer. 3rd one this month." I took a sip, enjoying the momentary celebration. They really don't give up. Can't blame them. We're crushing it. His easy grin was reminiscent of the old Jason, but there was a new substance behind it now. "But they're wasting their time. This is a family business, and we're not for sale at any price." "Speaking of family," I nodded toward the entrance where Michael Caldwell had just arrived, looking slightly uncomfortable in the formal setting. "I'm still getting used to seeing a Caldwell on our team." "He's earned his place," Jason acknowledged. "The sustainability initiative has brought in 6 new clients this quarter alone." We watched as our mother spotted Michael, and to my surprise, waved him over to join her table. The sight of Margaret Matthews willingly engaging with a Caldwell would have been unthinkable a year ago. "Mum's really changed," Jason remarked. "We all have, I guess. For the better, I hope." He turned to face me directly. "Definitely for the better, at least for me. I'm not sure I ever properly thanked you, Liv." "For what?" "For stopping me from destroying everything. For giving me a second chance I definitely didn't deserve." His voice grew serious. "For seeing who I could be instead of who I was." "That's what family does," I replied. "Or what it should do, anyway." As the evening progressed, I circulated through the crowd, greeting clients and employees, accepting condolences and congratulations in equal measure. It was during a quiet moment by the memorial display of my father's photos that I encountered an unexpected face. Vanessa Caldwell stood before a picture of my father breaking ground on his first major project, studying it with an expression I couldn't read. She had lost the polished glamour that had once defined her, dressed now in the uniform of the event staff serving drinks and hors d'oeuvres. She turned as I approached, recognition and then alarm flashing across her face. "Olivia, I didn't know this was your event. It's the Thomas Matthews Memorial Benefit," I said mildly. "The name didn't give it away." She flushed. "I'm just working. I needed the job." The woman who had once seated me at the kitchen table during her wedding reception was now serving drinks at my event. The symmetry was almost too perfect, much like the neat karmic justice of a fairy tale. But real life is messier than stories, and the woman before me looked more broken than villainous. "How are things with your father?" I asked, genuinely curious. "He's in Arizona, starting over, he says." She gave a brittle laugh. "Without me. Apparently I was part of the failure." "And you're working catering jobs?" "Among other things. Turns out my skill set doesn't translate well to actual work." She met my eyes briefly, then looked away. "I suppose you're enjoying this." I considered her question seriously. A year ago, I might have savoured this reversal of fortune. Now I found I took no pleasure in her downfall. "Actually, no," I said honestly. "I'm not. I never wanted to destroy anyone, Vanessa. I just wanted to protect what was mine." She nodded slowly. "You were smarter than I thought." A catering manager called her name from across the room. "I should get back to work." As she turned to go, I made a split-second decision. "Vanessa, Michael is here tonight. He's working with us now, heading our sustainability initiatives. You might want to say hello." She looked genuinely surprised. "He's speaking to me? After everything?" "Family is complicated," I said simply. "But it's still family." Later that evening, as the event wound down to its final hour, I found myself standing beside the large windows overlooking the city skyline. So much had changed in a year. The company was thriving under new leadership and directions. My relationship with Jason had evolved into something approaching a true partnership, each of us contributing our distinct strengths, even my mother, and I had reached a tentative peace, learning to appreciate each other's differences rather than fighting against them. "Penny for your thoughts?" Michael Caldwell joined me at the window, 2 coffee cups in hand. He offered one to me. "Just reflecting," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "It's been quite a year." "That's an understatement." He glanced back, toward the room. "I saw my sister earlier. Thank you for that." "Did you talk to her?" "Briefly. It's a start." He hesitated. "She's not doing well. My father essentially cut her off when the company failed." "That seems harsh considering she was following his playbook." "That's Richard Caldwell for you. Success is the only value that matters." He shook his head. "I spent my whole life trying to earn his approval before I realised it wasn't worth having." The honesty of his statement resonated with me. How much of my own life had been spent seeking my parents' approval? The difference was, I'd eventually found it, too late in my father's case, but found nonetheless. "What about you?" Michael asked. I overheard that investment banker making his pitch. Sounded like a serious offer. It was, but some things aren't for sale. Even at any price. I smiled. Especially at any price. As the event concluded, guests departing with handshakes and embraces, I found myself standing with my mother and brother at the memorial photo display. The 3 of us, so fractured a year ago, now stood side by side, a family still healing but intact. "He would have loved tonight," my mother said softly. "Seeing the company thriving, the family together." "The scholarship was a good idea, Liv," Jason added. "Practical but meaningful. Very Dad." We shared a moment of silence, each lost in our own memories of Thomas Matthews. "I have something to show you both," I said finally. Come with me. I led them to the hotel's rooftop terrace, where the city spread out before us in a tapestry of lights. In the near distance, the distinctive shape of our newest project rose against the night sky, a sustainable mixed-use development that combined affordable housing with green spaces and community resources. The Thomas Matthews Community Centre, I announced, opening next month, the first project completed under our new partnership model. My mother pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes shining with tears. It's beautiful, Olivia. It's more than beautiful, Jason said. It's meaningful, important, exactly what Dad would have wanted his legacy to be. As we stood together, looking out at the physical manifestation of everything we'd fought for, and nearly lost, I felt a sense of completion that had eluded me for most of my life. The kitchen table incident at Jason's wedding, an event that had once seemed like the ultimate humiliation, now appeared as merely the catalyst that had set necessary changes in motion. Matthew's construction wasn't just surviving, it was evolving into something better than before. Our family wasn't just coexisting, we were learning to truly see and value each other. And I wasn't just succeeding professionally, I was finding balance and meaning beyond the boardroom. The revenge I had taken by pulling our company's contract hadn't been about punishment in the end. It had been about protection of our company, our employees, our family legacy, and yes, my own worth and position. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about making others pay. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve. I think about that wedding day sometimes. The humiliation of being seated in the kitchen, the cold calculation behind it, the moment I decided I wouldn't allow myself or our company to be diminished. It changed everything. Have you ever experienced a moment that forced you to stand up for yourself in ways you never expected? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Life teaches us these lessons in unexpected ways, doesn't it? If you found meaning in my journey from the kitchen table to reclaiming my family's legacy, please subscribe to hear more stories of family dynamics, business challenges, and finding your worth. Like this video if you believe in standing up for yourself, even when, especially when, it's your own family underestimating you. Share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say, enough. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, respect isn't just given because of blood ties. Sometimes it must be earned through difficult choices and brave actions. I hope my experience helps you find the courage to demand the respect you deserve in your own life.